money, so we gotta talk a little bit about money. Okay, first thing I want to talk about is budget. And you know, if you're coming in as a new treasurer, this is one of the first things that you want to do. But even if you're not the treasurer, if you're the chapter chair or vice chair or at another level, you want to have a budget because that's what's going to guide all of your decisions. And you don't just decide, okay, I'm going to have a program and we're just going to spend. You want to have some guardrails on how you're going to spend for that event, and setting up a budget at the beginning of the year is going to help you do that. It's basically a comprehensive financial plan for what you want to do in that year. So you need to evaluate your resources. You know, what kind of assets do you have on hand, what's going to come in as income, and what do you expect your expenses to be over the course of the year. And there's basically two ways that you can set up a budget. Zero-based budget, where you're starting from nothing. You're not making any assumptions about how much you spent last year. You're just starting with zero and saying, okay, these are the kind of activities that we want to do. We know how much we're getting in dues. We expect to get this much in fundraising, and this is what we want to do with our money. And you just build that budget from the ground up. And the other, I guess, more popular method, especially for organizations, is just tweak the prior year. Where you've got last year's budget and you know that you want to maybe put more emphasis on a program, or you're going to hire somebody to do something, and you just build those into the budget, but you're not starting from the ground up. And either one is acceptable depending on the size of your organization and what it is that you're trying to accomplish in the year. But one of the other important things to do throughout the year is tracking your income and expenses and doing a variance analysis. How does your actual income and expenses vary from what you've built in that budget at the beginning of the year? And it just keeps you on track for spending throughout the year. Okay, so a budget on the income side, this is just some basic things that could be part of your budget. You know you're going to have dues. If you have a lot of money, you might have an investment account, and then there's also fundraising. Could be sell products. We've made a bunch of money in Allegheny selling our outstanding t-shirts. But you could do advertising, gaming. You could have 50/50s, raffles, silent auctions, grants are another opportunity. Types of accounts. So you want to break up your budget in operating accounts, media accounts, development, education, printing. These are just some examples of some things that units in Allegheny have done based on things that certain activities and projects that they've done over the years. The operating account is going to be the most common. And then on the expense side, here's just some examples of common expenses that chapters and divisions have. And it's important to break out those expenses, once again, so you can track from year to year how you're spending your money, or how you would like to spend it. Okay, bank accounts. This is the most common way of holding that whatever assets a chapter or division has. Some important things to remember: deposit checks in a timely manner, especially dues checks. I don't know how it works in New York and New England, but we have a real challenge in Allegheny, where our treasurer at the Allegheny sends out dues checks and they just sit. It's amazing to me how, when I look at a treasurer's report, I know how much is coming out of the Allegheny Treasury, and I look at the chapter's treasurer's report, and it's a totally different number on dues. How does that happen? Anybody who can figure that out. But another good accounting practice is to have two people sign the checks, especially for big items. I'm sure you've all heard about nonprofit organizations, community organizations, where somebody was arrested for embezzling because there was no oversight in that organization for the person who had control of the money. But at a very minimum, I would strongly encourage your unit to have more than one person have signing authority. We've had cases where the person who was the treasurer maybe got very sick, or worse, passed away, and nobody else had access to the account. So it's good to have at least two people having signing authority. Or even if that person is just on vacation and you suddenly need some money, it's good to have another person back up having that account. And reconcile your statements every month. Mistakes do happen on organization side as well as the bank sometimes. Okay, beyond the basic checking account. I know in Allegheny, we went through a process a couple years ago, well, I guess it was more than a couple years ago now, where there was a large fundraising drive, and we accumulated eventually $50,000, which was going to be set aside to be used for special projects. And for a long time, we had that money in CDs. And at one time, CDs were paying significantly more. Now, a one-year CD pays about 2%, and that's up from last year or the year before. So it's safe, but it doesn't pay a lot of interest. And you are locked in for a certain period. When you open up that CD, and it could be 6 months, a year. Of course, the longer you have the period, more money or more interest it'll earn, but it could tie up your money. And there is a penalty for early withdrawal. Now, if you have multiple CDs, you can do a ladder system, so that you take out a CD maybe in January, you take out another one in June, you take out another one the following January, and mix up your maturity periods, so that you would have access to money more regularly. So you still have the safety, but you have some flexibility in when you could access that money without penalty for early withdrawal. Now, we did that in Allegheny for quite a while, and we just felt like, this is $50,000 is a big chunk of money. And so it was about 5 years ago we switched to mutual funds. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because you can have significantly greater income on that. But as I point out here, it's a risk versus reward. If you're not really familiar with mutual funds, try to get more familiar if you want to do that. There are fees on all mutual funds. There are not commissions on all mutual funds. There are Class A shares, which you pay a sizable 5 to 6% commission up front for those, versus a no-load fund. Vanguard and T. Rowe Price being the big companies that sell no-load funds. But just as an example, we started out with $50,000, and over the course of 5 years, we're now sitting on between $63,000 and $64,000, just for letting that money sit. And when you think about how much effort it would take to do other kinds of fundraising, selling T-shirts, selling, advertising, doing other kinds of events, and here this money just sat, and we made over $12,000 on a $50,000 base. That's not a bad return. But as I said, you need to be familiar with what you're investing in. Okay, record keeping. According to IRS rules, you should keep all of your financial records, personal, organizational, business, for at least 7 years. So here's just some examples of things you ought to be keeping: bank statements, check registers, tax reporting forms at whatever level actually does the tax reporting, investment statements, receipts for expenses, and documenting any fundraising. Treasurer's report. I alluded to this earlier. These are done on usually a calendar year, but some organizations have a slightly different fiscal year. They might do October 1 to September 30th, but ours are generally done on a calendar year. And the next point you may be laughing at. The ending balance of 1 year must be the starting balance of the following. And I have a couple Allegheny treasurers in here, so I'm not talking about you guys. But every year, I still get, we have 11 units in Allegheny. There are still some that I get every year that the ending balance from the prior year does not match up with the beginning balance. So I don't know what happens between December 31st and January 1st. But once again, I will I'll give a prize, and anybody can figure that out. Okay, make sure your line items clearly describe the income or expense and provide notes. Because once a unit provides these treasurer's reports, and in my case they come to me because I'm the lucky person who gets to file the taxes, but it would be similar in New York or New England. Somebody's got to file those taxes. And the way you set up your treasurer's report may not be exactly the way the IRS reporting forms are. But I know a lot of our treasurer's reports, even though I've asked people not to do this, there's a line for other or miscellaneous. And on the IRS reporting form, there is a line for other income. But there's also a whole separate schedule, Schedule O, where you have to be very specific in what makes up other or miscellaneous. So if I'm getting treasurer's reports in from my chapters and divisions, and they put a chunk of money in other or miscellaneous, and they don't footnote it, I'm kind of stuck, and I have to go back and dig that all up. So you can really help out who's ever doing the taxes in your regional unit by not using other and miscellaneous unless you're providing a lot of footnotes for it. And submit those treasurer's reports on time. We, just like you're through personal taxes, we should be filing our organizational taxes on April 15th. Okay, federal income tax reporting. There, depending on the size of your organization and your level of gross receipts, there are different formats for doing this. There's the Form 990N postcard for organizations that have small gross receipts. What do you guys do?
We generally do the postcard.
990,
You do the full 990?
yeah.
Okay. We're in the middle. Allegheny's in the middle. We do the 990 EZ, and that one I just filed finally this year, and it was 13 pages long. And how long? Full Form 990 can be up to 40 pages long if you had to fill out all the schedules and. So it's a significant amount of work. Tax reporting needs to be done every year. SAF is a 501c3, so we do have nonprofit status. And that nonprofit status was conferred by the IRS onto the National Office of SAF. But that carries through to all the divisions and chapters. Now, not every division and chapter is going to have their own tax ID, and that's what you need to file the taxes. So we have one for Allegheny, one for New York, and one for New England. But there are, and the last point here, failure to submit those tax forms. We don't pay taxes, but we still have to report every year. Can result in the loss of the 501c3 status. And there were several, I'm not sure which states they were, but just nobody was paying attention to it, so they didn't file. And if you don't file for more than 3 years, you lose that 501c3 status. Okay, fundraising compliance. I'm going to go through this really quickly, because this was something I actually just discovered a couple of years ago when we were working on a project that was very different from anything we had done before. And I have a website down here, just Harbor Compliance, and if you have any interest in nonprofit fundraising, this is an excellent website for information. But each state has their own separate regulations on getting either an organization registered or exempted from fundraising compliance. And certainly larger nonprofits, this is much bigger deal, but it's still something that I think we need to pay attention to. And I know this came up at, I don't know if it was an HSD meeting or it was maybe a board meeting about there was a need to get better information out to the states and chapters about this fundraising compliance, because it's something that's been largely overlooked by most of our state societies. Once again, there can be all kinds of nasty consequences if your state really wanted to look into what you were doing as an organization and you didn't have the proper registration or exemption. It could just do bad things to your organization. Fundraising registration, and I just went through this. Now I know this varies state by state. Some states don't have any requirements on this, and some have, like Delaware's disclosure. Connecticut, Massachusetts, and New Hampshire have a registration, and then there's a bunch of states that require both. Okay, state sales tax exemption. This is another one of my special projects, and I know there are some states in here that don't even have a sales tax, so you guys can just tune out, but you'll enjoy this story too. If you don't have a state sales tax exemption and you are a state that has sales tax, I mean, just think about when you're putting together a meeting and if you're reserving a room or some kind of venue and buying food and supplies, and there's probably sales tax on every bit of that stuff, and over time that adds up. So if you have a sales tax exemption, it can save your small treasury a little bit. And that's, if you have more information, if you're in Allegheny, you can certainly call me. And in New England, it would be the treasurer, and in New York, I have the executive committee or the treasurer there. So Ken and Tom, I'll give you an opportunity for anything else, and if you want to talk specifically.
Role of an audit committee. You didn't address that in going through the whole process. I'm just curious.
Yes, we do have an audit committee, and we had a long-term auditor. Unfortunately, that person has decided to step down from that, and then we had another auditor, and she took a job in Wisconsin, so we're now looking for another auditor. But you should have your books audited every year. So there would be someone either internal to your chapter division, state society, who looks through all your records, make sure that the numbers add up, beginning and the end of the year. Do you have receipts for everything? Is there any irregularities there? So you should be audited, but if you don't have somebody internally, you may have to hire somebody externally to